Hi, I'm Sujoy Bose. I'm the Director of Infrastructure and Natural Resources for the IFC. The IFC is the private sector arm of the World Bank. We are a global development finance institution that operates across the capital structure. So we do debt, equity, mezzanine. We also provide advisory services and technical assistance to companies and to governments. And we also have a development arm which can actually work alongside project developers in developing projects across the world. IFC focuses on playing a catalytic role in making projects happen and helping companies achieve what they want to do in their businesses. We have a very large syndications business, which we've been operating for many years. In 2009, we started an asset management company, which has become one of the largest fund managers for emerging markets. We currently manage about $9 billion under that asset management company. We have almost 50 institutional investors, sovereign funds and pension funds that invest through us. And we've also developed a co-lending program, which basically allows us to raise money from, again, institutional investors and invest alongside the balance sheet. So we have currently a $3 billion program from the Chinese, and we are about to launch a program with European insurance companies, which could actually be a very interesting program, looking forward. The infrastructure portfolio is about $14 billion across 70 countries globally. In Africa, we have a portfolio of about $1.5 billion in the core infrastructure space, which is basically power, transport, water, and utilities. And it's fairly well spread out between West, East, and Southern Africa, and growing at a pretty fast pace.
Thank you for providing us with context to your institutions and the role that you play in the infrastructure development and finance of projects. And last but not least, Sujoy, if you could very briefly take us through the IFC's green bond and how it's been received on the continent and opportunities for investors. Thank you.
Thanks. So IFC has been a pioneer in creating opportunities to invest in the climate change based areas. And over the years, this business has actually grown pretty rapidly to currently a $13 billion portfolio of climate-related business. We're probably right now the largest financier of renewable energy projects in emerging markets. And we are doing about $2 to $3 billion a year of business in this climate area. So hence, in 2010, we thought we'd start experimenting with issuance of green bonds. And the green bonds are structured on a use of proceeds basis, which is that the investors in the green bonds are actually taking the IFC risk, which is a AAA risk, but the use of proceeds are basically dedicated to projects that are delineated as green, as climate-related projects, and this is audited and reported upon on an annual basis. So what started as a relatively small program has actually blossomed into a $5 billion program for us. And the couple of other things that have happened, which are actually quite interesting, we've done 2 issues of our benchmark bonds as green bonds. Now, the benchmark bond means that these bonds are used actually to basically price the IFC risk. So these are clearly very important issuances for us. This March, we issued a $700 million benchmark bond, which was green bond, which was twice oversubscribed. So clearly, it's a space where we are able to bring in new investors who are seeking this kind of investment. Now, the other thing that we clearly observed in the renewable energy, particularly area, is the need for local currency long-term finance. Mm-hmm. So then we decided to progress the green bond program into issuance in local currency. And November last year, we issued what we call a masala bond, which is an Indian rupee bond on the offshore London market, which was very well received. And this allowed us to put together a core of Indian rupee financing, which is available for Indian rupee projects as they come along in the climate space. And then in November, we launched a South African Rand Green Bond program in South Africa. which again is the same purpose, which is that it's basically allowing South African investors who want rand exposure to actually get the IFC credit, have a rand exposure, and also tie those investments to green or climate-related businesses. So basically, two key messages. First is, the green bond program has been pretty successful for us, and I think it's a very interesting space, becoming a more and more interesting space for institutional investors to invest into. Second, it is available in different currencies, including in South African rand. So look forward to your participation in the next issue that we bring to the market. Thanks.
Thank you, Sujoy. Is there time to open up to the floor for questions?
Thank you. This question is directed to IFC. I think it is really historical known that in terms of closing the transaction, it takes a lot of time in terms of IFC to approve the transaction. To issue a green bond, how long does it take you?
So now we are talking about the liability side rather than the asset side. Now we've been discussing for the last 2 days that project finance in difficult markets is not easy. And on the asset side, clearly, something that, for example, Helen also referred to is when we are structuring projects which have multiple risks and need to be structured along those various frameworks, sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it actually works pretty speedily if the market space, if the sponsors work or the promoters work, and all the other frameworks are in place. But that's on the asset side. On the liability side, we actually have to operate much faster because it's all market-based. And basically what we are typically doing when we are issuing bonds is looking for opportunities to issue bonds into markets at a time when pricing is attractive. I mean, that's really what we're after. And we are also trying to address needs of institutional investors who might be coming into the market at a certain point of time. So it's really, from a perspective, of an investment banker, it's basically really once they have the investor lined up, I mean, it's very easy because typically we are issuing in markets such as New York, London, Johannesburg, which are markets which are quite liquid and quite used to operating in the bond space. So on the liability side, I would say, and sometimes you have to make up your mind in days, if not hours. So that's really the difference in kind of the speed to market on the liability side as opposed to the months that it may take on the asset side.
Any further questions? So we've come to the end of our session. We'd like to thank our panel participants for taking the time out and sharing their insights on projects on the continent. If we could kindly give them a round of applause, please. Thank you.
Doing business in Africa. You can't afford to be without Africa Investor.